You don't remember the first time you thought about leaving, but you remember the moment you realized nothing was ever going to change. That moment is different. It's just clear. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. When people hear that someone cut off contact with their family, they often imagine one dramatic explosion, a screaming match, a slammed door, a final message sent in anger. But in reality, estrangement rarely happens in a single moment. It is usually years of quiet disappointment, tiny boundary violations, dismissed feelings, unspoken resentment, paper cuts to the soul that slowly add up. From the outside, it looks sudden. From the inside, it feels overdue. The psychology of people who cut off contact with their family is not about impulsiveness. It is about survival. Many of the people who walk away describe the same internal journey. They didn't want distance. They wanted repair. They wanted accountability. They wanted emotional safety. But at some point, they realized something painful. They were grieving the parent they needed, not the parent they had. And grief changes people. One woman said, "I stopped bleeding for the same reason." That sentence captures something profound. Estrangement is often not an act of hate. It is the decision to stop reopening the same wound. For many, the breaking point is not one catastrophic event. It is the realization that the pattern will never change. You try explaining, you try forgiving, you try lowering expectations, you try pretending it doesn't hurt, but the nervous system keeps score. When someone grows up in a family where love feels conditional, unpredictable, or transactional, the body learns to stay alert, hyper-vigilant, careful, scanning the room for emotional danger, even as adults. And over time, that chronic stress becomes unbearable. Some estranged adult children describe it as anxiety freeze. Others call it walking on eggshells. Some say they felt insane, not because they were unstable, but because their reality was constantly denied. Gaslighting has a unique psychological impact. When your experiences are minimized or rewritten, you begin to doubt your own memory, your own emotions, your own perception. And at some point, cutting contact becomes less about punishing someone and more about protecting your sanity. One comment described it perfectly. From the outside, it looks like one dramatic moment, but it's years of tiny paper cuts. That is not immaturity. That is cumulative emotional exhaustion. Of course, estrangement is not always one-sided. There are parents who feel blindsided, parents who genuinely tried their best, parents who carry their own unhealed trauma from childhoods where abuse was normalized. That complexity matters. But so does this truth. Intent does not erase impact. A parent may believe they were strong. A child may remember fear. Both realities can exist at the same time. Another painful layer is cultural expectation. In some communities, family loyalty is sacred. Separation is seen as betrayal. Obedience equals respect. So when someone walks away, the backlash can be severe. Smear campaigns, being labeled ungrateful, being called selfish, being painted as unstable. But often the person who leaves has spent years trying to stay. People rarely cut off healthy relationships. They cut off relationships where staying costs them their mental health. There is also something deeply misunderstood about timing. Estrangement often happens when the person finally gains enough emotional support elsewhere. A healthy partner, a therapist, friends who validate their experiences. Safety creates clarity. When you finally experience what respect feels like, you can no longer normalize disrespect. That contrast can be life-changing, because even toxic family represents history, shared memories, identity roots. Walking away can feel like cutting off part of your own story. And that grief does not disappear overnight. There is often a phase of intense guilt. Am I overreacting? Was it really that bad? Should I try one more time? This internal conflict is proof that estrangement is rarely impulsive. If anything, it is overthought. Some people hold out hope for years. They wait for an apology that never comes, for accountability that never arrives, for a parent to choose them publicly. When that hope dies, something shifts. Acceptance does not mean approval. It means you stop waiting for someone to become who they are not willing to be. Another layer of estrangement is boundaries. In healthy systems, boundaries are respected. In unhealthy systems, boundaries are treated as rebellion. When an adult child says, "I will not tolerate being insulted," and the response is outrage instead of reflection, that tells you everything about the system. The same is true in reverse. There are parents who eventually cut off adult children whose behavior is abusive, manipulative, or destructive. Estrangement is not automatically noble. It is not automatically selfish. It is context dependent. But what is consistent across stories is this. People reach estrangement when contact becomes psychologically unsafe. And safety is not a luxury. It is a requirement for emotional stability. Some critics argue that cutting off family reflects a lack of courage, that people should communicate more, forgive more, endure more. But endurance without change is not virtue. It is self-abandonment. Growth requires accountability on both sides. If one side refuses to acknowledge harm, there is nothing to rebuild. And rebuilding requires two willing participants. Another powerful insight is this. Many estranged individuals describe a hope cycle. You distance yourself. Things calm down. You reconnect. Old patterns return. You get hurt again. You pull away again. The cycle repeats until exhaustion wins. When someone finally breaks the cycle, it can look cold. But often it is the first self-protective decision they have ever made. There is also the psychological concept of differentiation. Differentiation means developing your own identity separate from your family system. In enmeshed families, independence feels like betrayal. In differentiated families, independence is expected. When a person grows into beliefs, values, or lifestyles that clash with rigid family expectations, tension builds. Over time, constant invalidation of who you are becomes suffocating, and distance becomes the only way to breathe. One person said, "I cut ties for no other reason than unsurmountable value differences." That may sound shallow to some, but value alignment is foundational for emotional safety. Living in constant ideological warfare with the people closest to you is draining. There is also the issue of accountability. Many estranged adult children say the turning point was not the original harm, but the refusal to acknowledge it. Repair requires acknowledgement. Without it, the wound festers. On the other side, some parents feel confused and devastated. They may genuinely not understand what went wrong. Sometimes they truly were doing the best they knew how. But the best I could does not automatically translate to what you needed. That gap is where misunderstanding grows. At its core, estrangement forces one painful realization. Love is not just a label, it is behavior. If someone consistently treats you in ways that damage your mental health, no matter their title, you are allowed to reconsider access. This does not mean revenge, it means regulation. For many who leave, life becomes quieter. Less chaos, less emotional whiplash, less anxiety before family gatherings. They often describe rediscovering themselves, relearning who they are without constant criticism, without being cast as the black sheep, without defending their existence. That process can be liberating, but it is rarely easy. There may be holidays spent alone, milestones without extended family, siblings who drift away. Estrangement is not a victory, it is a trade. You trade chaos for solitude, and peace has its own value. The real question is not whether cutting off family is right or wrong. The real question is this: at what point does staying become more damaging than leaving? For some, that point never comes. For others, it is unavoidable. What we must understand is that estrangement is rarely about hatred. It is about capacity. When someone says, "I'm just trying to save myself or what's left," that is not cruelty. That is someone choosing psychological survival. Family is supposed to be a source of safety. When it becomes a source of harm, distance becomes regulation, not rebellion, not trend, not ideology, protection. And protecting your mental health is not selfish. It is intelligent. And maybe the most misunderstood part of all this is that cutting off contact doesn't always mean the door is locked forever. Sometimes it simply means, I cannot heal while standing inside the fire. Distance can create perspective. Perspective can create clarity, and clarity can create healthier choices, whether that eventually leads to reconciliation or permanent separation. But here's the psychological truth most people avoid. You cannot rebuild a relationship with someone who refuses to examine themselves. Healing requires two nervous systems willing to regulate, reflect, and repair. Without that, contact becomes repetition, and repetition becomes re-traumatization. For many, estrangement is not about winning an argument. It is about ending a cycle. And ending a cycle is rarely dramatic. It is quiet, deliberate, exhausted. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is stop trying to earn love from someone who only offers conditions. With courage,